I was in 7th grade when I first met Owen. He was quiet, a little offbeat, but we got along well. We weren't best friends, but we hung out in the same group. Just a bunch of kids who didn't quite fit in anywhere else. Owen was always the weird one, though. He had this way of staring at people a little too long, and his sense of humor was off. But he was harmless. At least, that's what I thought. One fall, Owen invited me and 2 other friends, Danny and Eric, to his grandfather's cabin for the weekend. His parents were going through a messy divorce, and he said the cabin was a place he could escape to when things got bad. I remember the drive up there, the winding roads cutting through dense forest, the way the sky darkened earlier than it should have. The cabin was small, old, and smelled like dust and pine. There was no electricity, just oil lamps, and the floors creaked with every step. Owen seemed more comfortable there than I had ever seen him before. He was talkative, animated even, but something about it felt wrong. That first night, I woke up to the sound of whispering. At first, I thought it was Owen talking in his sleep, but as I sat up, I realized the sound wasn't coming from his bed. It was coming from the walls. It was so faint, like voices carried on the wind, but the windows were shut tight. I strained to listen, my heart pounding, but I couldn't make out any words. The next morning, Danny was furious. He said someone had taken his shoes, but no one fessed up. We searched the whole cabin, inside and out, but they were gone. He ended up borrowing a pair of Owen's old boots, though they were too big for him. I laughed it off, thinking he probably just left them outside, but something about it nagged at me. Later that day, we went down to the lake. It was completely still, the water like glass, but none of us wanted to swim. The air felt heavy, thick. Eric said he felt like something was watching us from the woods. I told him he was being dramatic, but when I looked up, I saw Owen standing at the edge of the trees, staring at us. He wasn't blinking, he wasn't moving, just standing there. That night, I woke up again. This time, the whispering was louder. It was everywhere, pressing in from all sides. I sat up, heart hammering, and glanced around. Owen's bed was empty. I nudged Eric, shaking him awake. "Owen's gone," I whispered. Eric sat up groggily, then stiffened when he noticed too. Danny was still out cold, but we could hear something moving outside. A soft crunching of leaves, slow and deliberate. We crept to the window and peeked out. Owen was standing in the yard, staring up at the sky, whispering to himself. His hands were clenched into fists, and his body was trembling. I was about to call out to him when he suddenly dropped to his knees and started clawing at the ground. I grabbed Eric's arm, my breath caught in my throat. He was digging, his nails scraping against the earth, whispering frantically. Danny woke up to the noise and came over, rubbing his eyes. "What's he doing?" he muttered. "I don't know," I whispered. Owen stopped suddenly, his head snapping up. For a second, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward the window. He was smiling. We dove away from the window, hearts pounding. None of us wanted to go outside, but we didn't know what else to do. Then, without warning, Owen walked back into the cabin like nothing had happened. He climbed into bed and lay there, facing the wall, completely still. None of us slept after that. The next morning, we didn't say a word about what happened, but when we went outside, there was a hole in the ground where Owen had been digging, and inside the hole was a single shoe. Danny's shoe. That was enough for us. We packed up our things, made an excuse, and left early. Owen didn't argue. He just watched us go with that same eerie smile. None of us talked to him after that weekend. He stopped coming to school a few weeks later. Moved away, we heard. We never found out what he was digging for or why he was whispering to the walls. But sometimes I still hear it, at night in my own room. That same whispering, and I don't know if it's my imagination or something else. But I know one thing for sure. Owen never really left.